Good afternoon. Please welcome from Helium, Clarissa Redwine.
Hey everybody, I'm Clarissa. I'm the grant manager for the Helium Foundation. Before I get started, I just wanted to see how many people in this room know about helium or are familiar with helium? Amazing, amazing. Okay, good crowd, good crowd. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with helium and you're in here because you're curious, we are building a decentralized global wireless network at a rapid pace. And to give you an idea of how rapidly this network is spreading across the globe, in January, we had about 15,000 hotspots providing coverage on the network. And today we have over 150,000 hotspots out there in the wild providing coverage in places that were never able to have that coverage before. So I am going to go ahead and share a few of our ecosystem players today. Here's how the show is going to run. We will share with you some of the people who are helping us build these hotspots. It is a decentralized ecosystem of manufacturers and tool builders. And then we will hear from the COO of Helium Foundation, Scott. And then we'll have a tech demo with our technical director, Joey. And then I will actually step in and chat with one of our most active community members about what they're building. So I think I'm going to hand it over to Anne. Come on up, Anne. Yeah, Anne is going to talk to us about how her team is preparing for 5G. Here you go.
Thank you so much, first of all, to Helium Foundation for inviting us. We are very honored to be here today. Hello, everyone. My name is Anne I. I'm a founding member and vice president of partnerships at Bobcat Miner. We are a global company with factories and headquarters in China, and we also have product and engineering teams in the US. Many of you know that we are the #1 hotspot maker in the Helium ecosystem. In 2021, we were voted by the Helium community as their favorite hotspot. And here's the fun fact. Actually, before Helium and before Bobcat, many of the core team members, such as myself, actually came from a conventional IoT space. So among many of the team members, we collectively shared a lot of experiences and successes in manufacturing and deploying sensors and gateways first. And then we found out about Helium, which turned out to be a game changer. We know now that there are more than 840,000 Helium hotspots deployed on the blockchain. And for us at Bobcat, since we started our journey more than, or a little over a year ago, we have already manufactured and shipped more than 370,000 Bobcat miners. And these were shipped to real retail end customers. And many of these people today deploy IoT gateways, such as Bobcat miners and other Helium hotspots on the blockchain. They provide the network coverage, and they also mine HNT at the same time. And here's the timeline that shows a little bit of our journey in the last 15 months. So in March last year, the company was founded, and we introduced our first hardware product, the Bobcat Miner 300. It was the product that's really rocket launched us into the Helium and the crypto world. And later, it became so popular that our customers give us a nickname, Bobber. And later, we very much embraced that name. In the past 15 months, we have shipped more than 370,000 miners, but we've also done a few other things because we don't see having manufactured these hardware as our finish line, but we also want to sustainably help build and grow the ecosystem together as we become such a big part of it. So we have introduced a few new and free services, such as the Bobber app for our device management, the Bobcat Discord community, which has more than 50,000 users, and also the Bobcat Knowledge Center, now with more than 100 original articles created for our users. And in March this year, 1 year after the company was founded, we then introduced our hardware product, the Bobber 500. It is an omni-protocol miner that provides LoRaWAN network coverage, just like its predecessor, but also it also provides CBRS 5G. It supports CBRS 5G protocol. At the moment, we are ready to start shipping these Bobber 500 starting the end of this month. Some of the customers already purchased in May last month when we opened our online store, and these customers will be able to receive them very soon in early July. The Bobber 500 is a joint partnership between our company and Freedom 5, the leader in open 5G. Last year, it was Helium that brought the two companies together in May. And since then, we started working on this 5G project together. And now, after 1 year, we are ready to present this to mass production and also for deployment at scale. So we hope that as Helium enters the next phase, the Bobber 500 can also become another community favorite. And actually, as of now, there's a campaign going on. If you go to our website or the Freedom 5 website, you will see the promo code FreeBob. Use that promo code and you can get a little discount when you buy Bobber 500 and the Freedom 5 radio. Thank you so much, everyone.
Let's give one more hand to Anne from Bobcat. She did such a great job. I know so many people are excited to get their hands on that Bobber 500. So, all right, next up, we're going to hear from Jose. Come on up. We're going to hear about the Hotspot Dev Kit ecosystem that you're building. Come on up.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Very, very happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Sunny Austin is definitely better than very cold UK at the moment, where I'm based. I'm Jose Marcelino. I'm solutions architect for RAKwireless, and now Minted, which is a company we created specifically to make consumer-level crypto hardware. And I don't have a lot of time, so I want to start with a very short story about Helium and how we got involved. So RAK was a company on doing already work on the LoRa ecosystem. This is the low-power radio that Helium uses. And then in 2019, I saw news that Helium was launching this global network. I was kind of interested because of the way they deploy. They were going to reward people for adopting these hotspots. However, what I didn't like was that they were going to do it with a proprietary protocol. So it kind of put me off, and I thought, oh, these guys have no chance. Wow, was I wrong? Only a few months later, they completely turned around. They went 180 degrees, and they adopted LoRaWAN, which is the industrial standard for radio. This enabled their kind of a composability for other solutions, so they could adopt existing sensors. They could roam with other networks as well, which I think really drove the technology. So another big change for Helium was adopting third-party manufacturers, and RAK was the first one to do that. So back in 2020, they announced RAK was going to make a new miner. This was actually published in CoinDesk. I found this interesting. And RAK, HNT was not at that price it was now. I mean, not everyone believed it, but we saw an opportunity there, and we saw that people really wanted these miners and couldn't get them with just Helium providing them. So currently, Anne already mentioned some big numbers from them. From RAK's side, we do have 175,000 hotspots registered on the network. These are on people's wallets, and so not just shipped, of course. But it's not just big numbers for me. So I think what I really like is what we can do with this hotspot and how we see this growth. So this is an example from my home country in Portugal. And you can see that in September 2020, before we had third-party hotspots and everything else, there was almost no hotspots, so the green dots are hotspots. And now currently, Portugal is one of the most covered countries. You can basically take any sensor you want around the country and get coverage for it. It's really an amazing experience. As part of the ecosystem, we're also helping get more adoption. So we're working with schools. We have our own development kit called the Helium Developer Kit. It's a kind of a Lego system, so you can build your own sensors, your CO2 sensors, your temperature sensors, your humidity sensors. Really easy to use. RAK's motto is actually making IoT simple. And even like kids at school can learn how to create their own sensors and go on the Helium network without having to register any kind of for contracts or handle any kind of payments for that. So that's kind of a short intro. We have the minted hotspot miners, and next we are launching our 5G hotspot as well. It's coming later this year. It's going to have an indoor. This is the indoor version. It will also have an outdoor version. So that's all. Thank you very much for your time. Let's build stuff together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jose. All right, now we're going to hear from Violet from Seed about how they're building a sensor ecosystem to bring to Helium. Come on up, Violet. Woo!
Hi everyone, I'm Violet from Seed Studio, a tech company with a focus on IoT power innovation, and with about more than a decade of experience and accumulation of resources in IoT hardware design, manufacturing, and distribution. Now we have delivered more than 1 million of IoT products to more than 180 countries and regions all over the world. And we are so happy to join the Helium ecosystem. With our IoT products and solutions, we hope to build and grow the network together. Speaking of the network, the first is about the coverage. So the first product that we have for the Helium network coverage is the SenseCap M1 gateway. So this full gateway was first shipped in July 2021. And after the first shipment up to now, today, we have more than 135,000 units of them added to the blockchain, with more added on a daily basis. And earlier this year, we also introduced the SenseCap M2 data-only gateway, more focusing on IoT solutions. And later, we will have SenseCap M2 Lite gateway, indoor and outdoor version. And we will have 5G hotspot as well. So in order to build the network coverage, we will think about some of them might need to be built in the remote area. So we will also have the SenseCap outdoor enclosure, as well as many other accessories. And apart from building our own products, we actually also cooperate with partners and community members to build some of the products that is catering to the needs in the community. One of the examples is the one here, is the Wild Field Tester. It's a collaboration between Seed and a community in France. And we are very much focusing on IoT hardware, but we do know how important it is for us to provide the app and also software for our users to manage the device better. So we are continually building and providing more of them. And on the other hand, after the coverage is provided, we do see there's a greater potential that can be released with the usage of the network. So we have many of these sensors. Most of them are actually focusing on the environmental sensing scenarios. So we have this SenseCap 8-in-1 home weather station. It can be installed very easily in your backyard or front yard or in the community to collect the microclimate data. And if you're looking for something more robust, we have the SenseCap 1 compact weather sensor. They're industry grade, so you can use them in outdoor severe scenarios for a long time, like a few years. And luckily, we also have some of them that is not as high level, but more user-friendly. So last year, we got voted as, the SenseCap soil sensor got voted as the first favorite device on the Helium network, and we are striving to provide more and better products. So earlier this year, we released this new generation of low-end devices. Most of them are in a very affordable price, and apart from this legacy of environmental sensor, we also provide many of them as the AI sensor. And only 3 steps, and you will be able to get the data on the app. And we take it very serious about product testing. So we have this series of products to make sure the products meeting industry standards. And this is a photo of that's deployed in a high mountain tea plantation in Sichuan province in China. And our products has been deployed in many different application scenarios in agriculture, in smart city, cold storage, and poultry farming. And a lot of them, and an increasing number of them, are being used on the Helium network, including the smart agriculture projects in France and also in Jamaica, and a smart weather station here in Texas in the US. And we are going to have more, including the environmental sensing projects in DR Congo. So this is just the very beginning. We are focusing on environmental sensing, but on the other hand, we will have some trackers for some scenarios for commercial or like consumers user cases. And apart from LoRaWAN, we will develop and provide 5G and Wi-Fi products as well. So we are looking forward to building this network and to create IoT solutions with partners and community members alike. And then we can unleash this potential to contribute to different industries and also every corner of the society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Violet. All right, now we're going to hear from Daniel from Hotspotty about how he and his team have built a really widely used tool for the network.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Hotspotty, and I'm here to talk a little bit about our story building Hotspotty up to now. We heard about Helium, I think it was exactly 2 years from now. Still quite early on the Helium ecosystem when there was around 4,000 hotspots on the network. And we decided to really dig into, because I realized how amazing this project was. I was lucky enough that I had all the hardware at home as well. So I was able to join the DIY program before the year was announced. I spent a lot of time talking to the Helium Foundation, to the Helium DY and the Helium people as well at the time. And just start building the network, getting super excited, trying to do a lot of things. Like this picture that you can see, it's one of the first hotspots that popped in Europe. It was a DIY, and then I had this little hardware that I was walking around the neighborhood trying to test the coverage, like looking at my phone and pressing a button and seeing if I could see that information. After realizing how cool Helium was, we decided to deploy 50 hotspots around Lisbon. You can see my home office at the time full of hotspots and on the other side, there was Max, the other co-founder of Hotspotty, after a beautiful deploy in the city of Lisbon. And we started learning, deploying, spending a lot of time on the Helium Discord, trying to teach people, trying to learn, building tutorials and everything. So that was really exciting. But after having 50 hotspots deployed, we had a big problem in our hands. How do we pay our hosts? We have 50%, let's say, payment agreement with their host, but then there's an issue that all the information of the rewards is in the blockchain, but you actually need to pay them. We need to download this data, put in a spreadsheet and everything. So we decided to build Hotspotty. At the time, it was called hotspotmanager.xyz. And that was when this project started. I remember showing the Helium hacks once, and then Joey's like, just ship it. They're like, okay, YOLO. Let's put this website live and see what happens. And then people start using. We get a lot of customers from there. This was supposed to be a gift, but it's a feature that we have in Hotspotty right now. I don't know if you guys know, it's called time travel. You can go back in time, in any time in the network, and see how was the network back then. So this one is October 2020. We already have a few hotspots that belong to us there in Lisbon. And if you see now, Lisbon is one of the most built city. Let's say one problem that we found out on the Helium is that it's a decentralized network, which means that you don't know who else is deploying hotspots next to you. And maybe your neighbor is going to be putting a hotspot exactly where you are, and you can't do anything about it other than trying to find his antenna and then throwing a rock, right? So what we decided to do with Hotspot is okay, Helium built a lot of algorithms to help people and force people to spread the network, right? Throughout the HIP 15, HIP 17. And we at Hotspot were okay, so how do we make this easy for people to understand without needing to just look at the information on the blockchain, which is a database? Let's try to make this easily visualizable and to teach people and through collaboration and education, help spread and help the network. So that's when, let's say, Hotspotty 2.0 came out. We set the version 1 and released the version 2. And then that was our main key point that we decided to educate the community, to visualize and optimize and work together into building a better Helium network. Another tool that we released a few months ago, we call it Super Simulation, is that you can place a virtual hotspot on the map or multiple hotspots, and then it's going to calculate line of sight with all the hotspots, and you can decide where you want to place a hotspot or not. And from there on, we keep on building and building on the Helium network to become this perfect tool, not perfect, but we're working there, to manage your fleet of devices, pay your hosts, and everything else. Throughout, we've been coding nonstop for the past 18 months, and with that, we built like over 65 features. If you go to the website, there's like a massive list that almost break your website. We have over 225,000 users with many being added every day, and a lot more. Last but not least, we're also releasing our Hotspot Connect. It's like our mobile app that you can use to onboard devices, because Helium is going to sunset the option to actually onboard devices on the Helium with the Helium app. So we decided, instead of you having to download an app from each manufacturer, why not have just one that you can onboard everybody? So, and besides that, you can also talk, when you log into the app, you verify your wallet, you can communicate with other hotspot makers and everything. And that's for my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was great. All right, next I'm going to bring up Denis and Jan from Layer Zero to talk about what it takes to build a business with Helium and become a hotspot deployer. So yeah, let's give them a warm welcome.
Hey everybody. Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Jan, and this is I'm Denis Agarkov. We're both co-founders of Layer Zero. Just wanted to hear, thanks for coming, and wanted to take you around a little bit of our journey through the network, through the Helium network from early days till today, and kind of share our experience with you guys. It was years ago that Denis and I kind of dreaming and talking about oh, wouldn't it be great to have a kind of peer-to-peer, kind of like wireless network or something that's user-owned? We just kept like talking, and sure it was that a few years later, actually, Denis called me and told me literally like, hey man, you gotta check this out. And that was summer 2019. We realized that was the Helium network. We discovered it, and really soon we understood. We tested the technology, and we understood that this thing, was something really special. We shortly after, actually, we were so excited. We saw so much potential that COVID happened, and we had so much time, and we decided to move literally full time. So there was just no way back. That led us to have a lot of time for the Helium network and to think about what was not working, let's say, perfectly in the network. And although we tested the network, we were using trackers like the ones they presented before, and kind of the path that Daniel was presenting. We saw everything was indoors. All these hotspots that were providing coverage were indoors, and we wanted to fix this. We wanted to, we were in Los Angeles. There was, barely in the network. There was very few spots, and we started kind of modifying, going on big locations, really tall, and we actually moved on to creating what we called, eventually we called them the Christmas trees here. They were just bulky, large, big. They worked really great. They were great, but they took, maybe a day or so to get up there. And, we got really dirty, as you can see them, attics and stuff. And, it was great, but there was still a lot to fix. A few months later, we kept learning, and we understood that a lot of these, deployment issues could be solved by being in the warehouse and by coming in beforehand, prepping these things, optimizing, and becoming and creating systems, like prepping all these stats, shorting it out, standardizing things, and eventually that was at the time when we started understanding that we needed to design and create and print our own kind of 3D printing, like parts and pieces for that. And that was all great, but it was still really expensive. So it was about $1,200 per, per setup, and it was still time-consuming. So it would take about an hour per each device to set up. So we were really thinking, like, how can we cut it down to, like a 10-minute install? How can we prep everything so that it could be really fast to deploy? So that's when we created Alpha, which is our enclosure system that can retrofit your existing indoor hotspot into an outdoor setup.
And so we really focused on like making it plug and play, right? So we really wanted to cut times down from 4 hours or 6 hours that it took at first to then bringing it to like an hour to then bringing it to like 10 minutes to install this thing. And so, you know, we assembled a kit, a really comprehensive kit, and with all the accessories that you would need, and you can take your unit and really make it outdoors. So we utilized that for our hosting program.
And you know, soon after we started getting the first prototypes in and we were installing them, we realized that that was a big difference in installing times and scalability, right? We dropped it all the way down. And that went straight back onto our operations. Our crews and us, we couldn't catch up. Like, we had way too many spots for the work we could put out. So we went back and thought again of our hosting program. What can we do with our host? What can we do with the units that we have on hand, and how can we scale these big, like kind of like the expansion that the network was having or was actually going to. And what happened was that actually we jumped on and created a national hosting program with the hardware we have, and we offsetted the installation times to each of the hosts. That allowed us to actually, you know, be much faster, hit all 50 states. We're currently at 300 plus locations, and hopefully we'll be at 600 by Q3, all of them utilizing Alpha. So that's kind of the story on that end.
And we also did some mapping efforts to, you know, show to businesses and people that Helium Network was really, really usable and active. And so we, you know, we just, on our dime, we hired some people and we drove around, and you can see the difference here that before we mapped it out and a few weeks after, basically, that was the idea. And then we just think that Helium is like a sea of opportunity, right? So you can take that open network and you can create really different businesses on top of it. So we did POCs into asset tracking, cold chain management, and technically that stuff really, really works. So you know, that's just something to always keep in mind, that you can take any type of sensor and bring it onto the Helium network, and it's just going to work like a charm. Technically, it's really, really sound. So that's our Twitter accounts, and if you guys want to follow us and ask us any questions, Helium.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Perfect. All right, next I'm going to bring up the COO of the Helium Foundation, Scott Sigel. Let's get him up here.
Cool. All right, we're on. Thank you, Clarissa. Thank you to CoinDesk for hosting Consensus, of course, and everybody for showing up and joining for our talks today. But mostly I have to thank our community and contributors. One of the things I love about my job, much as I love speaking glowingly about Helium every day all the time, is that I really don't have to do it that much because the community speaks for itself. The devotion from people around the world who are helping to build this network, to evolve it, to improve it, it just really, it's inspiring. It's, you know, kind of one of the things when I get up every single day and think about who's kind of building the things in this network and the true utility that we're bringing at a civic and a social level through blockchain technology. It's truly inspiring. So, oh, that's me. Okay. So let's talk about what's kind of gone on in Helium over the last year or so. It's been an absolutely epic year, truly, in terms of, you know, how things have gone for us over the last year. It's actually really great to be back in Austin. So everything started for us back in summer 2019 is when Helium first went live on mainnet. For those who don't know, Helium was actually not a blockchain project for when it got started. It was really all about how can you propagate LoRaWAN coverage for IoT around the world. And the team went through multiple iterations how they thought about this, and kind of like some other things. Well, just throw blockchain at this, it'll solve the problem. And it did. So, you know, we launched in, the network launched in August 2019, but really when things started to take off is, you know, over the last year in terms of the growth that we've had on the network. We're now at, you know, again, getting closer and closer to 500,000 hotspots deployed around the world. Data credits flowing through the network continues to expand. We were now at the point that 10% of the global population is now within a half a kilometer of a Helium hotspot. So, you know, 700 million people being able to actually deploy a smart device and use it in the real world is possible immediately. So the fact that we've had that kind of growth, you know, I would say really, you know, over 3 years since launch, but, you know, 2 years is when things have truly ramped up. It's, you know, absolutely incredible. 63,000 cities with Helium network coverage. I mean, our Discord continues to grow with 170,000 on there. Validators, again, that's just kind of a statement and signal as far as how much the community really believes in the network that we've got 1/3 of supply already locked up where people have that type of conviction. And I'll speak a little bit more to validators shortly. And obviously we have our hotspot manufacturers, third-party providers. So what was initially built by Helium Systems Inc., the founding team behind the technology, we opened that up to a larger community of manufacturers to really better serve the community. And again, you've heard from some of them today who have just been absolutely amazing contributors to the network, who do more than just kind of the manufacturing work in terms of evangelizing, helping us thinking about new novel use cases in the network. So truly fantastic to have them all in our ecosystem. So let's talk about validators. Validators actually launched, I believe it was just in June of last year. So Helium was interesting in that all of our hotspots were actually, our consensus group was running off of hotspots. So if you can imagine, these things are sitting sometimes in people's homes running on consumer-grade internet. Somebody's internet goes out, and all of a sudden, you've got a block halt. That's kind of problematic. So migrating over to more of a proof-of-stake, typical style consensus model has helped the network scale considerably. And that opens us up for greater scalability for more devices, less data flowing in through individual hotspots. And again, as I spoke to earlier, about 1/3 of the network is locked in and staked on validators. And I think one thing that's really interesting to note is that our unbonding period at 5 months, I think that some people in different blockchains would look at that and be a little bit shocked, but our community was pretty much on board with the idea, and again, just speaks to the signal of how much people really believe and devoted to this to be able to lock up and secure the network over that period of time. And we're supported by a number of providers in this. So some of these are probably familiar names as far as kind of the more multi-chain providers like a Blockdaemon, Coinbase Cloud, which I believe is formerly Bison Trails. But the fact that we had so many being built within the community, again, just speaks to how much folks are devoted and really aligned with the network to run their own providers from within the community. So talking a little bit about our community of makers. So as I spoke about earlier, so the team that was now Nova Labs, formerly Helium Inc., was the first provider of hotspots onto the network, working closely with RAK. And then ultimately, in terms of, again, scalability and thinking about how we continue to decentralize and distribute work throughout the ecosystem, through what was done through HIP 19 was a proposal to open this up to third-party manufacturers. So taking, again, this authority, this control away from the founding team and opening it up to a broader community, we now had, again, creating more open market around different providers, different makers, some who you've heard from today who have been absolutely fantastic. And it's really allowed us to scale up considerably to have folks around the globe with different distribution partners and touch different countries and different folks around the world. We now have been able to scale up so significantly, having what is now, I believe, almost 36 different manufacturing partners. So, January of 21, I think we were at about 15,000 hotspots. By the end of 2021, we were at nearly 500,000. Now, almost at 850,000 hotspots covering the globe. And this has just really been absolutely fantastic to see this type of growth happening, so driven by the community. And now we are actually starting to move, and I won't get too into it, but the idea that being able to propagate IoT coverage this rapidly, we've certainly had a lot of other wireless standards who have come over to Helium to say, how do we think about propagating new types of wireless networks beyond LoRaWAN and beyond IoT solutions? And some of the folks who talked about 5G hotspots coming soon, this is really a key issue in terms of closing the digital divide. So this goes beyond blockchain technology in terms of a real social and civic problem of underserved economic areas, rural parts of the world who truly do not have sufficient wireless coverage to actually be able to give agency to those communities leveraging blockchain technology to deploy out this type of coverage. Not just using smart devices for better resource management and asset tracking, but now getting into broadband cellular coverage truly opens up new economic opportunity for folks around the world who don't otherwise have access to sufficient wireless coverage. And again, kind of going back to the IoT side, we really have seen some absolutely amazing use cases popping up, again, all different areas. So just kind of looking at some of these. Barnacles, a package tracker, very simple small device. You just pop into a package. Again, you're talking about these things that have battery life for years, so they can be reused over and over and over again. So again, greater levels of accountability and transparency. For asset tracking, Care Band is a really fantastic solution for elderly care. Really great small device. Again, low power, long range, making sure that elderly folks with dementia, for example, in terms of making sure they are where they need to be, just having better resource management for some of these elderly homes. Let's see what else I can talk about. Victor, we literally do have a better mousetrap on the Helium network. Somebody did build a better mousetrap. So for commercial properties, it's very hard to manage a lot of those basements and kind of looking at rodents and pests. So Victor is actually a connected mousetrap that helps a lot of these commercial properties better manage some of their properties. Now that's smart water sensing. So again, so many of these things, we'll think about one of our grantees that actually came in recently. It's actually doing corrosion monitoring for pipelines in oil and gas. So the use cases that we're seeing here are around smart city solutions, smart agriculture, supply chain management, which again, in an interesting constrained environment right now, but the idea of having better accountability and resource management across these things, better economics for commercial, better for municipalities who are budget constrained, certainly. Again, we have a CTO of a major municipality actually sitting on our grants committee telling us about things that we otherwise would have thought about. So smart manhole covers, you got to make sure that cars aren't running into these things or people aren't dumping toxic waste in the middle of the street. All these things are better for urban management, again, rural, soil sensors, all these different things that are beneficial across the board. So really inspiring to see a lot of these things kind of popping up over and over in the Helium network. So truly building new economies around IoT in a way that really wasn't possible before. What's been challenging for the IoT and kind of the LoRaWAN standard in general is the idea and propagating these types of networks has been very economically difficult. There's actually a large network operator who recently went bankrupt. Again, the idea that for these lower amounts of data, running enough volume through that, making it economically feasible. So for some of these out in the field applications, it really was not possible or very difficult to propagate those types of networks. So Helium truly does open up a lot of new interesting applications in the IoT types of use cases that really go well beyond your home Wi-Fi. And it's benefited a lot of the companies that formerly looked at us as competitors, and again, we've created a lot more symbiotic relationships. So if you look at some of the names here, Actility, Senate, these were large LoRaWAN network operators serving large enterprise. So again, you're talking about customers, the likes of Volvo and Oracle, Cisco, Schneider Electric. And a lot of these organizations would look at him of like, what are they trying to do? They're disrupting the industry. It's another failed, scammy blockchain project. And again, you fast forward only mere months and down, we're partnering with them for roaming solutions. So to the degree that they couldn't stand up their own infrastructure, again, the CapEx wasn't viable for them. They now can roam directly onto community-owned coverage in a way, again, was not before possible. So seeing this, again, this is truly a tide raising all boats type of scenario where what was perceived competitors, now we're working together to raise a global standard around IoT, bringing new applications to the world that truly do benefit, civic and social around the world. So really fantastic to be working with those organizations. Another big change that occurred earlier this year was we were actually formerly known as the Decentralized Wireless Alliance. So we stood up as an organization to steward the governance around the Helium ecosystem, and have been doing this and running the grants program as well. That started in 21, where we funded about $500,000 worth of grants. But one of the biggest milestones that went through this year was actually rebranding. So the team that was formerly Helium Inc. rebranded to Nova Labs, and all of the GitHub repository, all of their open source code, the actual IP and assets have all been handed over to the foundation for the betterment of community use, partner use, and just more ways that we can distribute the authority and ownership of the network. So as of only a few months ago, rebranded to Helium Foundation and continue to ramp up a lot of our operations around a number of the areas that we support on. So again, as I spoke to, we are overseeing governance for the network, running the process there around proposals, community calls, and making sure that, again, enough of the community has a say in how do we think about the technical and economic evolution of the network. One of the biggest milestones recently was evolving the network from the IoT standard, moving into other wireless standards that we can, again, leverage our existing incentive model to propagate more wireless coverage around the world. So network governance being one area. Ecosystem development is another one. So again, we talk about network coverage, but overall we want to make sure we have a strong contributor ecosystem of builders. And again, how can we encourage folks who want to create applications and build on top of the network, building tools? So Clarissa, who runs our grant program, has done an absolutely fantastic job ramping that up. We've gone from, I believe it was about 500 million, sorry, wow, let's try that again. 500,000 in grants in 2021 to we've already surpassed 1 million in grants halfway into 22. Amazing applications, features, and tools. The community is just incredibly motivated. We just want to make sure we're there to support them. Education advocacy, one thing that really excites me is the amount of positive sentiment around Helium from the public sector is absolutely, it's incredible. The fact that Helium truly is one of the non-partisan blockchains that either side of the aisle can really get behind. So in terms of areas around closing the digital divide, better benefits for commercial operations around, again, asset tracking, transparency, accountability, and things that we can do for rural connectivity. I get to talk to folks, Democrats, independents, Republicans, folks overseas, and again, we focus a lot in the US as far as a lot of our near-term education, given a lot of the fact that we have CBRS in the US to leverage 5G, but as we start to engage a lot of the municipalities overseas and governments, folks really do see an incredible civic and social benefit. So the amount of education advocacy we're doing to really help folks understand where this is approachable, it's important we drive a lot of that work. And certainly technical oversight, so serving as a technical and economic check on a lot of the community contributions and work. So I spoke to grants a little bit. And again, very exciting, moving beyond just the wireless standard of LoRaWAN into 5G broadband cellular, where we can continue to propagate coverage, and super excited about the work that RAK is doing, the work that Bobcat's doing, the work that Seed's doing, all helping us expand beyond IoT use case into 5G and broadband cellular. So again, spoke about this a little bit earlier, but the idea that Helium wireless network for LoRaWAN now becoming more of a network of networks. The idea that you can have these different services, different products, again, now supported on top of Helium. We've actually been working with another protocol around decentralized VPN. Again, the idea that each Helium node would be able to also serve as an access point there. So continue to expand significantly on the utility of what Helium can offer to both folks in the blockchain ecosystem, but also to the world. And then I guess we open it up to Q&A now. Oh, do we need to move on to the next one? Okay. You coming up now? Okay. Sorry, just say, hang out? Okay. No. All right. We have time for Q&A.
All right. Yeah, we unfortunately don't have time for Q&A, but next up, I am really excited to welcome Joey from our team. No, is this? Are we? I'm sorry. Do we have time for Q&A? I'm so sorry. I was told we didn't have time for Q&A, but okay, let's do it. Scott, are you feeling brave? Okay, come on out. Yeah. All right.
No, too much.
Got the stage for 10 minutes.
10 more?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I always look at the clock and it ran out. So, so we doing Q&A? Let's do it. Until somebody from CoinDesk tells me to stop, we'll just keep going. So.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Definitely. So,
right. Are we set?
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So it looks like we're moving here really quick. So I'll be as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So when we kind of started mining, right, a lot of us got our foot in the door by hosting these hotspots in their house. I think when I started, there were about like 8,000 of these things, and now well over 840,000. So, you know, the question is, and I think the spirit of everything is, what are some of the demand cases? You know, what do you use this massive network for, and you know, who's going to buy in, and also maybe touch on some projects specifically that you're, you know, interested in, or ones that kind of stand out to you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's, you know, end of the day, you know, we had to bootstrap coverage through, again, proof of coverage was one that hosts were being rewarded, and how we could actually stand up coverage, and making sure that, again, the supply side was there to serve the demand side ultimately. But you know, the point of the network and then, you know, reasons for existence is truly for, at least initially, was mostly around the IoT use cases, which I'm still very excited about. As much as 5G has become a little bit of the bright shiny object in the last couple of months. So much of what we can do now with IoT and smart devices on Helium just wasn't possible before. Some of these things that we can do truly out in, if you're talking about rural areas, if you're talking about things around asset tracking, I think it's one of the biggest areas. We talk about a lot within our community, but there's just so much around like what that actually unpacks. So the idea that we had one organization that came to us and they're actually doing vaccine transport. Wow. And the idea that not just being able to track these things as far as their geographic location, but also leveraging Helium for how do we make sure we're monitoring the temperature of these things in transit. So the idea that you can have multiple use cases occurring within one application and one consumer is pretty inspiring. Some of the things we're seeing on the ag tech side, again, it's pretty hard to get Wi-Fi signals out in the field, and cellular is not always, it's kind of cost prohibitive to set these things up. So to actually be able to empower, we've had a couple of vineyards we've worked with, different farming operations where, again, like dropping soil sensors and being able to actually measure the stuff, from a desk. It just reduces the capital needs on their side. It's just empowering so many of these smaller businesses to kind of run their operation with smarter devices. A lot of the stuff, I think I really do love a lot of the public sector work too, as far as, again, if you think about cities and towns who are just so budget constrained, the ability for them to actually monitor so much of what's happening around traffic, around water metering, around air quality. I think we actually had one organization where it was, I think it was 2 marathon runners who were trying to figure out what's the best time to run during the day. They set up air sensors, and just the idea of having these things now, again, it's effectively as a public good. It's really fun. And you're talking about sensors that, several years of battery life. It's stuff that just wasn't necessarily possible before Helium existed. So some of the stuff we've seen is incredibly excited, but I feel like I'm even more excited about some of the applications that just haven't come to be yet, because it's a young network, and the idea of having IoT out in the field is really can be game changing for so many organizations and so much of the public sector.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned 5G.
Yeah.
I think that's on the tip of everyone's tongue.
Everybody wants to talk about 5G, yeah.
Especially me, right?
Yeah.
I'm very excited about it. So I think there's going to be, obviously there's the low band network, and then there's the 5G network that's going to be built out, and they're going to kind of coexist with each other, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of know the vision for the lower band network, but what's your vision for the 5G network?
Yeah, so I think that, the way that we, anybody who really wants to dive in and kind of dig a little deeper, so it's called HIP 51 is the governance proposal that really outlines how we started to think about Helium expanding from a single network on top of LoRaWAN and focused on IoT, which is the original idea. But the North Star for the Helium network overall was always about access for all. It didn't necessarily matter what that wireless network was. So the way that we think about 5G, at least as far as the rollout is, we kind of want to let the market decide to get things up and running. So the idea of, well, how much data actually runs through for each network, how much folks want to actually stake to each network is going to actually determine what we're calling a protocol score. So the idea of how do we think about routing rewards is really going to be driven by the market. At least at this stage right now, at this point in history, LoRaWAN's about I think it was a 10 to 15-year-old standard or so. So the market for IoT, 5G and broadband cellular, it's a more mature market, so the addressable market there is significantly larger. And the fact that if you know anything about kind of the existing telecom landscape, rolling out 5G infrastructure is incredibly difficult and it's expensive. So the idea that if you're looking at U.S. carriers like an AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, you have to have, so again, for anybody that knows about this in terms of macro cells that are out there, you have to have these things closer and closer together to have that kind of higher frequency and kind of higher data throughput. So the idea that a carrier could actually leverage a network that is community owned, it's beneficial to them in the sense that they can roll into this for fraction of what they otherwise would have paid to some of these other infrastructure providers who are standing it up themselves. So we very much complement the existing network operators as a roaming solution, but at the same time, it also opens up for challengers to come in and say, I want to run better service than AT&T might, which, that's be perfectly fine to see more network operators come in, because if you have the network that you can already operate on, so it opens up for challengers. It's beneficial. We're not coming into this saying we're disrupting everybody and we're going to destroy all the incumbency. It's the fact of it benefits the existing incumbents, but it does open up for new network operators who want to run and potentially provide a better front-end experience. So that's kind of how we think about it. But again, the idea of what types of private applications you can run on 5G, it's kind of endless. So.
And to kind of build on that, Helium considers themselves a neutral host or a neutral carrier. Right?
Yeah, you could think of almost as like a decentralized. Like neutral host in the sense of it just exists and it's like any block. It's open, it's permissionless. So if you want to use that, all you have to it's effectively you're burning HMT to create data credits, and you have a balance of data credits, pipe and run as much data through the network as you want. Whether you're an individual organization and using it for a commercial operation, or if you're a network operator and you want to be able to have any of your end devices roaming onto Helium. So
can I ask, do you think that, and I don't know if you can answer this, but
yeah.
Do you think one of the bigger network carriers, the Verizons, the AT&Ts, the T-Mobiles, do you anticipate, I don't know how to kind of word it without putting you on the spot, but do you think there's going to be some kind of buy-in on that side?
Do I think there will be buy-in? Absolutely. I can't speak to how much there's any existing. Put it this way: the fact is, again, this is beneficial to their bottom line.
Right.
There's, again, I can speak to the fact of I know that there's appetite for it, and it's incredibly exciting from the perspective that I look at it as like how is this good overall for, again, if you think about like economically underserved communities where, again, what blockchains do in general is giving agency to individuals and communities, and certainly with Helium, it's something that you can like physically touch and understand. I think that the fact that to what's now Nova Labs credit, they kind of consumerized mining in a way. It probably might be the largest mining community because it's so approachable. The fact that it's so plug and play, and that you can see and touch a piece of hardware that not only you're providing coverage, but you're also. It's really like that gateway drug, if you will. If people say, "Oh, well, now I want to actually try to run a device in the network." So, but anyway, yeah. So back to your question, it's just such a low barrier that there's definitely going to be a lot of interest from that side because it's just so cost effective for them.
Right. So. Right. And I think we have roughly about 30 seconds. So the last question here is, why are you bullish on Helium?
So this is blockchain project number 4 for me.
Right.
I've worked on trustless settlement. I've worked on general purpose blockchains. I've worked on decentralized storage. And I think so the broad range of applications, number 1, the benefits to society, both public sector, commercially, again, from an economic perspective. And when I look at our community of folks, the amount of time that people give to this and how much, how do I better set up hotspots? How do I deploy devices? How motivated people are because it aligns with their values. That's the whole point of what we're actually trying to get done here is how does this actually make the world a little bit better, not to be trite, but truly like that's one of the things that we're trying to do. So the fact that people are so motivated by that, and it's that's the focus, I feel like sometimes this project sits off in a little bit of a corner of our community so much of our community is actually not crypto native, which is really interesting. But if you want to talk to them about wiring and antennas and arresters, and they'll talk to you until the sun comes up. So the fact of how much momentum and motivation there is from the community, and that we don't have to do we do the evangelizing, but the community does it. Right. It just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, we're going to solve this problem. We're going to figure out how ubiquitous wireless becomes real through Helium.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So glad we made time for that. All right, now I'm going to bring up Joey, our technical director from the Helium Foundation. He's going to share how you build something on the network. Thanks.
I think we're doing good on time. I went and checked, so no rush. Cool, so I want to give you a quick demo of, wrong way, what it means to build and even just run a device on the Helium network. So I'm coming from this, not as like a super technical person, to be totally honest. Like, this is me coming in and saying, like, how can I build something in the easiest way possible? And so what we're going to build, sort of virtually, because I'm not going to do it all right here, is one of these. This is an IKEA air quality sensor, and we'll get a little more into that later. Background, I was roaming around on Twitter one night as I tend to sort of kill some time, and I came across this post. And this is somebody doing a teardown of an air quality sensor and saying, like, look, this thing's like pretty good, and it's only 12 bucks. So this is cool to me. And immediately I sort of like do a little more research, like, what is this thing? It's an air quality sensor, but it doesn't really do anything other than like the light changes color on the front. It's not a smart device, doesn't activate anything else in your home. You know, kind of neat, but not really actionable, I guess, unless you just want to tell people how terrible the air quality is in your house. So a little more digging, and I came across a project where somebody had taken one of these and actually already done a lot of the research for me, and understanding the protocol transmission between the device and basically the LED up front. And they set it up in a way where you could use an ESP 8266, which is a really common Wi-Fi chip. And so you could transmit this stuff over Wi-Fi. I'm not interested in that. I want to see how it's going to work on Helium. So I go take a look. It's 12 bucks, 13 bucks. Super easy. I'm sold. I used this dev board. So there's a ton of LoRaWAN dev boards in the ecosystem. This one tends to be a pretty cheap one, and I had them on my desk. But again, 15, 16 bucks, like pretty easy project, like super low barrier to entry. So we're talking 30 bucks max. Like totally, let's go, let's build one. I gotta keep my head straight. The first thing I like to do when I'm kicking off any one of these projects is usually just jump into console and like create a device that is gonna be the endpoint for my data as it comes over the air. So we've got this, you know, huge network of these glorious hotspots. This is a real hotspot. It's going to hear that signal, and then it's going to pass it over the internet to what we call these router consoles. So we at Helium Foundation, we operate a console, and you can run 10 devices on it. You can buy some data credits. You can dump a ton of stuff through it, set up all sorts of cool integrations. But then we've got a bunch of ecosystem partners that also run these consoles for more commercial applications. As we pointed to earlier, all of those roaming partners all sort of run their own instances of this as well. So I'll name a device, we'll get these keys, it'll go and it'll get added to the blockchain. So we run this thing, it's called an XOR filter. Sorry, it's technical, but it's basically one of the parts of infrastructure that we use to like allow the Helium network to sort of scale to the next billion devices. It's a method to sort of sort stuff out. So that gets added. In the meantime, we've got these keys. These 3 keys are sort of like the core parts for any LoRaWAN. There's actually 2 methods, but we use the OTA protocol. We use these keys, we'll put them on the code. So basically take that, paste it in there, and that's how the network knows when this packet comes over the air where to send it, basically. So this code that we're looking at here is the GitHub project that I pulled together for this. Totally open source. You can go to that link. I'll have a QR code at the end. And that'll allow you to, you know, do everything that it does. It's kind of magical. As far as the actual hardware goes, you crack this thing open. It's got 4 screws in the back. And then there's 3 wires that have to be soldered between the IKEA board, which is what we're looking at right now, and then attaching that to the cube cell. So we're actually able to power the dev board off of the IKEA board, and pulling it all together. It looks something like this. So you solder these 3 wires together if you're comfortable with soldering. If you're not, it might be a little bit challenging, but it's a really good project. And just because I really like 3D printing and modeling stuff in that regard, and I like to keep things clean, I put together a 3D printable bracket just so everything's not sort of floating around in there. Putting that all together, we get something that looks a little bit like this. And so what you're seeing here is just the top of that board sort of sandwiched on top of the IKEA board. Nice little tidy package. And then sort of running the wires up from underneath. That's basically it. So after you've flashed that code in there, this thing's just going to join the network It's going to start sending data on a sort of interval. And the first thing that I like to do for any project when I'm sort of like trying to learn and understand how this thing's working is just to start dumping all of that data into a Google Docs. Google is an integration that we offer as part of that console package. And so you can just set up an integration that says, like, I want all this stuff in a spreadsheet, and then everyone here knows how to like create some spreadsheet visuals. So it's a really cool way just to like start understanding the data. One of the neat things that I found here, even though this is kind of noisy data, is that I could actually start to recognize a trend. So during the day is on the left-hand side of that chart there. And you can see the air quality is a little worse. There's cars driving around. I live in a city. And then it's sort of at night when cars stop driving around, air quality got a little better. And then the next morning I came in and started tweaking with the update values, which is why you see sort of some funnier stuff as the trail ends there. But of course, getting this stuff into Google Sheets, while maybe academically interesting, isn't really like the end goal thing that most people will be thinking about for devices like this. And so I like to think about how can this be a little bit more invisible in the home? And that's where I think it'd be neat to think about doing like a HomeKit integration or something like that, where if the air quality worsens in my home, my air filter should just automatically turn on. Or maybe I get a little notification that says like stop burning the toast or something like that. So just kind of fun stuff. This I think proves like a really simple use case, but you can start to think about that extrapolating out to just about anything in your home where you want a better idea of that. If this kind of thing is interesting to you, I definitely want to point you to our community Discord. So we have a sensor dev channel with a ton of involvement there. So our Discord is discord.gg/helium. I'll be in there. There's like a million other folks that are sort of popping in there all the time. Furthermore, this is the GitHub project where I put this all together. So if you want to sort of take a look at that, there's a QR code. You can scan it. It'll like pull up the GitHub repo. And taking this a step further, if this is the kind of thing that is exciting to you, if you like thinking about the bits and atoms, hardware, and wireless networking or connectivity, I will call out again that we are definitely hiring at the Helium Foundation, so definitely come talk to me and love to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joey. Out of curiosity, how many folks here have actually used a sensor on the Helium network? Can you raise your hand? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And how many of you have actually seen Joey's project before? The IKEA hacks. Oh my God, okay, awesome. Awesome, well, we're gonna sort of double down on this builder part of our ecosystem, and I'm gonna bring up one of our most active community members, and Nick from Gristle King is actually an educator as well. Let's welcome him up.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Come on in.
Thank you. Sit down. You guys are probably kind of bored at the end of the day. Maybe if you just stand up for a second and just like shake it out. I've been shaking it out over here for the last 20 minutes and like, okay, let's finish this thing off strong. Sit back down, maybe look at your neighbor, smile at him, and then we'll crush this thing for the end. I got my smiley socks on, so I'm ready.
That's amazing. Here, let's see.
We're gonna get our
great start.
our starter and finisher here.
All right, well, I want to ask, I want to start by asking, what are you building? What is the project you're working on?
I think the projects I'm working on are endless. The one that I'm going to talk about today is this people counter project on El Cajon Mountain in San Diego. So El Cajon is this kind of giant rock, basically, that sticks out of the earth. The geologists would probably describe it a little bit differently, but it's a really striking thing to see it. And it's important to me because it's where I put my first outdoor hotspot. This is amateur jade hair that's up on El Cajon. And it is using a giant antenna that I shouldn't have used, but I did because I didn't know any better. I didn't come into this with a technical background, but I kind of figured it out along the way. And you guys are seeing it, the antenna looks pretty familiar. I didn't know what I was doing when I put it up. You guys did, so thank God someone knew what was going on. But yeah, that's what's going on. So this is providing coverage to this trail system that is out there. It's one of the most difficult trails to hike in San Diego County. And so we see a lot of people on there not doing a good job of hiking it safely. And so I wanted to see how many people are on there, how many people are hiking on that thing, and maybe we put some data to what's actually happening.
Yeah. And why is this project so important to you? You know, what drew you to working in this area?
So you see, this is a kind of common occurrence in the summers out on El Cajon, as you'll cruise out there and see this really beautiful mountain, and you'll see this marine layer coming in, and it's as if you're on a mountain overlooking an ocean. It's a beautiful place. It's one of the last places where you can Cenothus, which is a plant endemic to much of San Diego County. There's a bunch of different species on there. Most of them, to be honest, you guys probably don't care about. They're plant species or bugs, stuff that you might step over, step on. But there are mountain lions out there. There are golden eagles out there. There's deer. It's a beautiful place to be. And so what I saw coming out here was that I got to put a hotspot on there. I had the kind of great privilege of getting out there and putting a hotspot up. But also, maybe I had an obligation to kind of give back a little bit to this place. It's a private piece of land, which is where I put the hotspot and where I'm putting these people counters. And this private piece of land is run by a nonprofit. And I don't want to put words in their mouth. They don't really know much about IoT. And so I thought, well, I've gotten to learn a bunch. Why don't I help them learn as well and do something beneficial and help them count how many people are coming onto this property, and then we see how much we need to protect some of the plants and species on the property.
Yeah. And when you got out there, what wireless connectivity did you have access to?
I mean, initially there's nothing, right? Yeah. So there's a little bit of cell phone, depends on where you are, depends on which side of the mountain you go along. This is a ridge that goes basically east-west, and so if you're on one side, there's nothing. If you're on the other side, there's a little bit in the saddle, there's really not much. Once the hotspot went up, there's obviously a lot more, and then as San Diego filled in, you guys have been seeing these maps fill in with hotspots over the year. It happened really quickly. All of a sudden, the last time I went out there 2 weeks ago, there's basically no point on the trail that you can be where you don't have hotspot coverage. So pretty exciting to see it kind of happen in my world and not just on a digital map.
Yeah. And what kind of hardware did you start working with? Did you test anything out? What worked? Why did it work?
I should probably test more stuff out. So I found this thing that I thought was really cool. It's a company called Parametric. They're out of Switzerland, and it's a LiDAR people counter. So it's using basically a radar to count people. So we're not collecting any personally identifiable information. I thought it was rad, but it turns out that with a lot of these IoT projects that we're seeing, for the kind of really technical folks, they are pretty easy, but for folks like me who are not technical, it's a little bit more difficult. And in this case, Parametric doesn't have this thing set up yet to work flawlessly in the US. And so one of the kind of cool things, and also it's like this challenge and opportunity for all of us here, is as we're building the Helium network, as we go into it and see like, okay, this is not yet like totally plug and play. And for some of us, that's going to scare us off. For some of us, and for a lot of you that are here today, just by being here, you are in that position, you're kind of raising your hand and saying, that doesn't scare me off. And this didn't scare me off. It's like, okay, well, we'll just figure it out along the way. So I've been talking back and forth with Parametric and saying, hey, here's the problem I'm having. It's not doing this or it's not doing that. And they come back and say, okay, we're going to update the firmware. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And so together, and this is kind of the coolest part of Helium, is together all of us can work to build a better network, a better system. And so in another week or so, they're coming out with firmware 4, which should be the final piece that actually has these things out in the trail and working reliably. But there's been a couple kind of hikes back and forth to make sure that I put them in there and then take them out and bring them back, update the firmware, go back out there. And that's stuff that I like to do, but maybe not everyone does.
Yeah, one thing that I love about your work is that you document and share so much of what you're working on. And I'm curious how you think about sharing your journey with the wider community. Are you building community around your project? What are you working on there?
Yeah, so there's two parts to that. Number one, there's definitely community here. I got a couple of the Gristle crew here today, so the folks who are kind of in the membership on my side, where we come and we meet once a week and we talk about various projects and what we're doing and what's out there. Mostly Helium focused, but obviously there's many other projects out there, so kind of building close to me. And then also, look, I look at Helium, and really I'm just going to focus on the IoT side for now. It's as if the Mayflower sailors got to America, and there was already a system of paved roads. And they see that, and they're like, oh, cool. Like I could probably run a horse down that road, maybe go faster than a dirt road. But really, we don't know what those things are for yet or how well to use them yet. We don't know yet that you can put cars on that road. You can put fast cars on that road. You can put trucks on that road. You can put pickups on that road. You can put an 18-wheeler on that road. You can land a 737 on the highway right now. We're not even close to what is possible on this system. And so one of the exciting things as we go through and build these communities is sharing all those pieces of information and knowing that we may not know exactly where this network is going to go and what we can do on it, but we do know that this thing is far bigger than our current imagination is. And so our job is to kind of imagine and to learn. That goes to the second part of your question, which is no one got off the Mayflower unloaded their Lambo and went however fast the Lambo goes, right? They all got out there and kind of figured it out as they went along, and there's always going to be people out there in front, and those people out there in front are going to be making mistakes. Many of you who have followed along watched me make some $50,000 mistake the other day as I shared my 12 words like an idiot on an Ethereum miner, right? And that went the wrong way. But hopefully you guys got to see that mistake on my end. You say, well, I'm not going to lose 50 grand that way. And you learn from that. And it's the same thing with these sensors, right? Is that for many of the technical people here, it is easy. For the majority of us, it's not easy. It's a really difficult thing. And so if you have someone out there in front a little bit making the mistakes for you, then you can come behind and not make those same mistakes, not spend that same money, time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears. And ultimately, we have a much better network that way. So the more mistakes that I can make for you, kind of the better it is as far as I can see.
Yeah, yeah. And what would you say to encourage people to build things like land management solutions or smart ag? I'm just curious how you encourage people to get started.
I think the encouragement is thinking how big the potential is, right? There's just so much out there. And so some of it starts off with kind of very practical, hands-on advice where you go and you find a place that you love and you ask them what problems they have, and you see how you can help them, right? And whether that's land management like this, like I love El Cajon Mountain, I love the San Diego River Park Foundation, and so I wanted to help them. Or it's your local city, you're talking to your local village, mayor, government, whatever it is, local companies around you. Do they want to monitor water? Do they want to monitor energy going into a house? It doesn't have to be a giant project. And that's kind of one of the cool things about this is that as part of building this project, I end up working with and cooperating with a lot of different companies and entities. So whether it's asking Jan and Denis for help or Joey for help or Scott or Travis or any of the kind of folks out there like, hey, how do I do this thing? What's next? What do I do next? Or finding other people in the community. You guys saw early on the Hotspotty guys, Daniel literally showed me how to do my first do-it-yourself hotspot and got a lot of help out of that. Or stuff like this where this guy, Nick Huff, has built Uplink Engine so that I can build on top of that this trail count piece, which was the very first slide we showed you, which is what it looks like. And so there's all these kind of different pieces coming out in the world where we as a community get to help each other and work together to build something much, much better and bigger than any one of us could build by themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And
sorry, I go on tangents here. I get all excited.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. People love it. One last thing that I wanted to ask you is, so you actually won a grant to work on this project.
That's true. Yeah.
And as part of your grant, you are creating like documentation and videos and blog posts and a bunch of things to help people follow along so that people can follow in your footsteps, like you were saying before, learn from your mistakes because you're documenting them. Yep. And I'm curious if you can share where people can find out more about your project.
As a matter of fact. Yeah, so just go to gristleking.com is the blog, and so that's where I'm kind of laying out as I go along what's happening on this, or the Gristle King Discord server, which you can find through the gristleking.com website, and it's probably the best place to do it. But I think really one of the important pieces here is that I'm certainly not the only person building on this network. I'm not the only person to follow, and ideally, and ultimately, I'm not the only person out there at the very edge. There's many people in this room, and as you look around, there's people here who can lead you. There's people here to follow. There's people here to walk next to. And so it's our obligation and our kind of opportunity and maybe a little bit of our responsibility as we embrace the future and figure out what technology looks like for the world to come, is that it's on us to build this thing in the way that we want it to be.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nick. Everyone, please give Nick a hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, that is pretty much wrapping up the Helium Foundation session today. And one thing that I wanted to end on is our team was pretty excited about coming here today because we're thinking about all of the innovation and solutions that are built here in the Web3 space and thinking a lot of people who are building things today are going to need wireless networks to actually deliver value in the real world. It's an infrastructure that so many of the projects here at this conference need, and we're so excited that everyone here is excited to build Helium with us and part of the community and part of building this infrastructure. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you so much for joining. Thank you.